Okay, at long last it is time to animate. So I'm going to mainly be animating in OpenGL view. You're probably familiar with this is what we're getting in the render view, and really pretty happy with this, but you'll notice that when I click, it takes it a while for the camera to update. That's because we've got a lot going on in here. Like that's actually, it's rendering that frame. And so you can see that we have a render time. It's going to take probably a couple of minutes for this thing to render out when we're done. So just so I have it a little bit more reactive to me, I'm going to work in OpenGL view. And my timeline's a little messy right down here, and I could do some stuff to group things under a peg and stuff like that. But for right now, I'm not too worried about it. What I am going to do is sort of focus in on the areas that I plan to animate, and I'm going to do this in, so the big ones are going to be my arm, my ship, and my alien, right? There will also be a little bit of animation I'm doing on the camera, and at least once through here I'm going to animate my environment, which is into the stars, and everything else to kind of change the scene, right? So it'll be all the same elements. They'll just be in a different location, and the environment will look different. I may also put like a planet up here and stuff. So I really wanted to feel like I'm cutting from this angle to a side angle. So that's my overall plan. I'm going to animate my claw coming out, sort of doing a couple of pinches, scaring Winslow. Winslow is going to be looking at the bananas, and he's going to see the claw pinch. It's going to scare him, and he's going to take off running toward the ship. And at that point, we'll cut to a different camera angle that's from the side view, and we'll see Winslow sort of run across and sort of jump in the ship, and then the ship will take off and zoom off into space. So that's the plan. Right now I have 200 frames on my timeline. We may have to extend it more later. But let's work on layout for shot 1 right now. And the way I'm going to do that is very simple keyframes to get my timing. So let's start with my arm. So just a little house cleaning. I'm going to open this up, and you'll notice that I have some of my pegs don't have any keyframes on them. Some of my drawings do. I just don't want to make this too messy. So I'm going to go lock my drawings. The only time I would really want to mess with those is if I were doing a drawing substitution or a second drawing. So if I wanted to do a drawing of this piece bending or something like that, right? So I don't really need to be able to access the drawings anymore. All the animation is going to be done on the pegs. And to make sure that my first pose is clear, I want a keyframe on all the poses, or on all the pegs. And you'll notice right here I have no keyframes on peg AP, or arm AP, arm BP, arm CP. I have no keyframes on those, right? The only one I really have a keyframe on is the arm master control. Now, I could go through here and hit F6 on all of these, right? I'll also show you on the arm master control, I don't even have a keyframe. If I hit this plus sign here, I don't even have a keyframe on everything on it, right? I only have it on these things that I've moved. So if I were to minimize that again, and on arm master control I hit F6, then when I expand that out, you'll see there's a keyframe on everything. I want to do the same thing for all my pegs. And again, I could go through here and click on each of them and hit F6, but that's going to take some time, right? And it's going to be slow to work that way. So the easiest way to work, and one of the reasons we group all of this under a master control, is that now all of these drawings are locked. I can minimize this, click here on the top parent of the arm master control and hit F6. And so now when I expand this back out, everything that was unlocked got a keyframe, right? I can do it again to show you. If I go out here later and hit F6, everything got a keyframe on it that was underneath that. Now, if I don't want it on everything, let's say I just wanted it on everything on or CP and below, right? And I hit CP here, I hit F6, I could do that. And now everything under that got a keyframe. Now, let me undo that just a little bit, get us back to here. I am going to hit F6 on this first pose, but this isn't the pose I really want to start in, right? I really want to start in something a little, let me hide my crate just to kind of go and hide it. Yeah, let's hide it temporarily. I really want to start with something a little bit more bent, right? So I'm going to do like a rotate 90 degrees on each of these. I'm really just trying to tuck my arm into the box. And so both of the claws, holding down control, just like both of those. So now when I turn the crate back on, it's hidden, right? And then my arm control, I can hit F6 there. Now, I want that to kind of stay like that for a few frames while we see Winslow looking at the bananas. So go ahead and hit F6 again. And then I want it to spring up pretty quickly. I'm going to try something and see if this works. Well, I guess what I could have done is deleted all the keyframes and started with it fully extended. Instead, I'm actually just going to go ahead and re-extend this back out again. So let's go down through here and extend the arm out, get both claws out. And what I do want is I want it to sort of like be open and do like a pinch, right? So yeah, F6. And so I'll probably change a little bit of this transition as we go. That's not exactly what I'm going for on how it's coming out of the crate, but we'll work on that as we get a little closer. Pop up, and then almost immediately I want these claws to go back to closed and do like a quick pinch. Now, even though I'm not animating the rest of it, I'm still setting a keyframe on everything. And the reason for that is like, I want to make sure, like, think of this as a drawing, a final drawing, right? I want to make sure that this always looks like what I have here, right? So if I don't set a keyframe on everything and I go out here and change something later, it may change something I didn't key back here. So I'm going to do a little bit of an extension on this. I'm going to go ahead and push my translate and this master control up just a touch so it goes up and back down, and then go ahead and have it sort of do a look over at Winslow. So maybe move this over to here. I'm going to do this so it's a little easier to select those claws. And then I feel like this could be a little bit more mischievous looking. Okay. And again, minimize all the way up, F6. So let's watch that and see what that looks like. So a little on the simple side right now, but we will refine that later. So now to start working on Winslow. So I'm going to just minimize, I'm going to find Winslow's character, alien character. And again, I want to make sure everything on that alien character has a keyframe. So again, F6. And just to make sure, I'm going to go ahead and save as a new version. I'm going to call this Anim 01. And so just in case I crash or anything, I can come back to this point. So I want to pose Winslow, and again, probably should have done this before. Yeah, I locked a lot of his channels already, just like I did. So a lot of the drawings are locked, right? And so by hitting F6 with everything minimized here, I should have gotten a keyframe on everything, right? And I'm going to go ahead and turn on his deformers and start putting him in a pose looking at these bananas. So move him to here. I'm also going to go to my perspective view and see about, do I need to move him forward just a little bit? Maybe just a little. Maybe have him over here near the bananas. So I want him to look like he is sort of leaning over them. I thought I locked those. Let me lock the environment so I can't accidentally select it. So I'm going to pose him a little bit. So I'm going to lean him forward like he's looking. I may want to periodically check to see what that's looking like with our shadows. Not too big of a deal, but maybe gives me a little bit of a better idea. And I do want this to feel like a pretty curious pose. Now I think to make him curious, I'm going to squash him down just a little too much. And maybe a little bit like this. There we go. Now you'll notice that his eye is sort of still looking straight at the camera. And so I'm going to go find that eye peg. And so it can be a little hard to find what you're looking for down here. So the eye master peg is right there. But if you can't find it, you can always use this as a picker tool as well. So for example, the eye master peg is going to let me move the entire eye over to where I want it to be. And then the iris I can point down here. So we're getting a better view of how the character is looking. I want this to not feel quite so angry. So I'm going to manipulate I want it to look more curious, right? So we'll do a little bit more like this. And then finally, I'd like to go ahead and do at least a pose. Doesn't have to be a finished pose, but do a little bit of a pose with my antenna. Like this. I think I'll play with this a little bit more later. All right, adjust this just a touch. So that's a pretty good. I don't like that with the antenna. Let's do a little bit more forward. That's a pretty good starting pose for Winslow, right? And so I keyed a whole bunch of things, but I'm not for sure if it was everything, just to make sure that this pose always stays like this on frame 1. I'm going to hit F6 at the top of the hierarchy here, F6. And so now that pose is pinned down. Now, I want Winslow to see the claw come up about the time it does come up. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust some of those things. So his eye peg, I'm going to move it over to here a little bit, like it's looking over. I'm also move the iris, see this, and I'm going to do a little bit more on the body pose to stand him back up a little bit and make him seem a little bit more alert. And I will animate the iris to there, and then I'm going to try to make the eyebrow look a little more surprised, like, what is that? And one of the ways we can do that is to show a lot more white around the eye. So if I minimize this and hit F6, now I have everything transitioning to that. Now, I will say, well, let me do a little bit more work on this pose here. That needs to be a little bit more like that. And then I also think we ought to do a little bit of something with these antennae, make them seem like a little more at attention. I'm going to do it a little bit more outward in each direction. And I could probably just go ahead and raise the entire eye up just a little bit. And that's going to make him feel a little bit more alert as well. So again, alien character, if I hit F6, I get this transition to that. Now, you're probably pretty aware that if you were animating on paper, you wouldn't get these in-betweens automatically. And in fact, that kind of resulted in a workflow that we call blocking. And in traditional animation, you would do these pose-to-pose drawings, right? So I would do the drawing for frame 1, and I would do the drawing for frame 13, and then I would figure out how I got from 1 to 13 afterwards. Well, Harmony's trying to be helpful. It's trying to do it for you. But the problem is I'm not really ready to think about that yet. I really just want to look at my key poses. So if I select these keys, I have the option here to either have a motion keyframe or a stop motion keyframe. And a stop motion keyframe means it's not going to put any transition in there for me. So I just get it holding this pose until it snaps to this pose. And sometimes that's a little easier to see what's going on. I can see my pose a little more clearly, right? And it helps me understand my animation a little bit better. So if we were to watch this now in the stop motion version of this, what we get is that look. And what I'm noticing is Winslow responds maybe a little too early. Maybe I want to go ahead and just move all of that down to like there. And so I can, there we go. That's feeling a little bit better. In fact, if I wanted to, I could do the arm, like the claws arm, in stop motion keyframes as well. But for right now, I think I'm going to stick with this. So we get this. Now, I will say it's kind of boring to watch somebody animate. So I'm mainly going to go ahead and work in this blocking just a little bit more. So what I'm going to have is Winslow be shocked at this and have him sort of do a jump up in the air, like surprise take, and then land, right? So I'm going to have a couple more keyframes and we will pick back up there and I will show you some tricks on the surprise take as we move along.